I think it's fair to give a question to the American media.
CNN, да?
Were you allowed to come here?
CNN? Вот второй.
Please, I see CNN, yes. On the second row, right? You don't believe your luck.
Please go ahead.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, Matthew Chance from CNN. You've, Mr. Lavrov, repeatedly praised President Trump for understanding Russia's interests on the issue of Ukraine, for instance. But you've also criticized recent US moves against Russian allies in Venezuela, in Iran, threats against Cuba, things like that. My question is, to what extent do you think that inconsistency, that unpredictability, that willingness to use unconstrained power by President Trump actually in itself represents a threat to Russia?
Firstly, in my introductory remarks, I spoke about Venezuela, Cuba, and Iran, and we clearly see the inconsistency in the actions of the Trump administration concerning international security issues and international law. Donald Trump, in response to a relevant question a few days ago, said he is not interested in international rights, and that all norms of behavior on the international stage are determined by his own morals. This is an interesting statement. We never expected that with any country, including our nearest neighbors, we would have a 100% match of positions. Such alignment cannot exist even between the two largest nuclear powers, the Russian Federation and the United States. By the way, it is a good opportunity to recall what the New York Times recently reported in an article titled, "The Godfather in Riyadh." It reported that Marco Rubio, during negotiations with me and our delegation in Riyadh in February 2020, as the New York Times writes, switched to movie fan mode and quoted The Godfather. He recounted the scene of Vito Corleone talking to his son, "I have tried all my life never to be careless. Women and children can be careless, but not men. Nuclear powers should communicate with each other." Such a conversation indeed took place, and since Marco considered it possible to mention this to the press, I see no reason why I cannot add some details. At the very beginning of our meeting in Riyadh, Marco said almost the following. I cannot, of course, quote verbatim, but I convey the essence exactly as I remember it well. He said that the foreign policy of the United States under President Trump is defined by national interests and common sense. This implies that the United States recognizes the existence of national interests among its leading partners. It was not said, of course, all countries of the world, but among its leading partners, other great powers. He continued by saying that the national interests of countries like the United States and Russia will not always coincide. In most cases, they will not coincide. But when they do match, it would be a crude mistake not to use this convergence to coordinate and implement joint, mutually beneficial projects in the economy, trade, investment, and other areas. That is how the United States explained its understanding of the validity of the approach outlined by Marco Rubio.
In the EU, there is a union, a unified state, which is Russia and Belarus. This is good. But are there any plans for future to develop warmer, closer relations with the countries of Central Asia? After all, Central Asia, so to speak, was a solid backbone during Soviet times.
Хороший костяк был в советское время.
Сердце мира.
Да, спасибо.
Уже состоялся осенью прошлого года.
The second Russia-Central Asia summit took place last autumn, and a joint action plan was approved, an expanded document covering all areas of our cooperation. Therefore, I would not say that we pay little attention to Central Asia, not at all. If such an impression has been formed, it would be appreciated if you could explain it, perhaps by sending us a paper outlining the basis for this perception. The annual Minsk conferences on Eurasian security, of which there have already been 3, are regularly attended by ministers from countries outside the region, such as Hungary, as well as representatives from Slovakia. I am sure that this year's Eurasian conference in Minsk will see increased representation from European countries. The direction of EU membership, which has been declared and supported by corresponding legislation, of course cannot coexist with the preservation of membership in the Eurasian Economic Union. If Armenia makes such a decision, as Mr. Pashinyan has stated, it will be made as an appropriate expression of the will of the Armenian people. This is the right of Armenia and the Armenian people. I would only like to note that it is difficult to ignore the figures that characterize the development of the Armenian economy over the past 10 years. Armenia became a full member of the Eurasian Economic Union in 2015, when its GDP amounted to $10.5 billion. Today, this figure stands at $26 billion. Armenia's GDP has more than doubled during its membership in the Eurasian Economic Union. As for the attitude towards the Armenian Apostolic Church, we regretfully observe the developments. The Speaker of the National Assembly of Armenia, Mr. Simonyan, and Prime Minister Pashinyan in a recent interview did not deny that hybrid threats exist in relation to Armenia from the Russian Federation, including hybrid threats connected to the situation around the Armenian Apostolic Church. For us, this can only cause puzzlement. Rapprochement with the EU does not go unnoticed. I mention this because it is precisely the EU that constantly speaks of hybrid threats allegedly generated by the Russian Federation. Funds are allocated for such work. A tranche of 15 million euros was recently provided to Armenia, and I have no doubt that the Brussels bureaucracy will demand that our Armenian friends account for every cent of this tranche.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.